Hey friends, welcome back to This Homeschooling Naturopath. If you're new here, my name's Hannah and I'm a homeschool mom of 3 girls who are 11, 9, and 7, and I'm also a fully qualified naturopath living in New Zealand. On this channel, I really like to share content related to homeschooling, homemaking, motherhood, as well as some naturopathic info throughout some of my content here. Today's video is a very different one. We are currently expecting baby number 4. I am 37 weeks as I am filming this part of the video, this intro, and I have spent the last several weeks filling up our freezer with a variety of freezer meals, and I got a lot of footage from when I was making all of that, and so I thought I would just put it in a little video for you guys and call it a freezer meal prep video. So that's what we're doing today. If you want to hang out with me in my kitchen for a little bit and see what kind of meals I'm preparing for the freezer for when this baby arrives, then keep watching. Alright, so freezer meal number 1 that I am making here is a good old classic beef stroganoff. Now, I am not really following a recipe here. In fact, when I'm thinking about all the meals that I have in this video, I don't really follow recipes, and if you guys are not new around here, you probably know that already. But a beef stroganoff is something that I grew up eating a lot of as a kid. It was something my mom made a lot of from my memories, and so I have a really good idea of what a beef stroganoff is supposed to taste like, and so I just do my best to make mine taste like that. Something that I don't really like doing though is using cans of like the Campbell's soup. That is something I know a lot of beef stroganoff recipes call for. You can buy cream of mushroom Campbell's soup here in New Zealand. It is something that you can actually purchase from the supermarket. However, I just prefer to make my own, and so that is what I have always done in my own kitchen. I will just whip up a cream of mushroom soup with a whole lot of mushrooms and cream, and it is just as delicious as the pre-canned stuff that you can buy from the supermarket. However, when you make it yourself, you have the benefit of not having all of the added preservatives and thickeners and whatever else is in cans of soup. I don't even know who really knows for sure. Making your own cream of mushroom soup is actually very simple when in its basic form. All I do for this is saute up some garlic, onion, and mushrooms, and then add whatever seasonings I want. Pop in some flour, which I'm doing here, just like you would do with a roux or any other type of bechamel sauce, and then add in your beef stock. And it's honestly as simple as that. And then of course a little bit of cream on top if you want it to be that cream of. And then I just decided to go ahead and start adding my ingredients to make this the beef stroganoff flavor that I wanted it to be. And so I did some Worcestershire sauce, sour cream, and some Dijon mustard to my cream of mushroom soup here as well. Once I felt like my sauce was the right flavor, I went ahead and added it to my seared beef that I put in the slow cooker before so that all those flavors can infuse together. Now I am doubling this recipe. I don't know if I mentioned that or not, probably not, but for this month, all these meals that I am making, well, most of these meals I'm just doubling. I'm simply doubling them and putting half of them into the freezer as freezer meal prep. And I had all intention of making my own homemade pasta for this dish, but it just did not work out, and so it was bagged spaghetti. Fettuccine or some type of other thicker egg noodle is ideal for beef stroganoff. But that's what we had, and so there we go. That is my beef stroganoff sauce ready now for the freezer. So that way all my husband needs to do is grab that bag of sauce out of the freezer and cook up a pack of pasta himself, and easy peasy, ready to go for the family. My husband is actually incredibly capable in the kitchen. That's something I've noticed a lot when I've been watching other freezer meal prep videos. Some of the women you talk about how confused their husbands are in the kitchen and how everyone would starve or just eat takeout every night of the week if they didn't do freezer meal prep. My husband definitely does not fall in to that category. He's very capable in the kitchen, and I'm sure if I did not take the time to do any of this freezer meal prep, that we would all be absolutely fine and that he would cook up some delicious, healthy meals for our family. So, taking this time to prepare all these meals for the freezer is definitely not something that I have to do, but it's a way that I can continue to contribute, even when I'm in bed with the baby. I can rest assured that we have these beautiful meals in the freezer, and maybe it's a control issue for me more than anything, to be honest with you. My personality type is definitely someone who really likes things organized and really likes solid plans and knowing what to expect. So yeah, maybe I've got a problem. Anyways, while I have been talking about that, I have been preparing some sourdough tortillas here. This recipe is from Farmhouse on Boone, and I absolutely love it. Sourdough tortillas didn't used to be my preference. I did continue using a non-sourdough recipe for a long time, but what I've found is that with the sourdough recipe here from Farmhouse on Boone, it actually creates a much softer tortilla than what I had been used to. The only thing is you do have to roll them out pretty much immediately, because otherwise they will stick, because the sourdough will start to rise on itself. So just rolling them out almost immediately. Like, you can't roll them into balls and leave them to sit on the bench for an hour, because they'll grow and they'll stick and it'll be a mess. So that's my only piece of advice with that. What I am making here, in case you're wondering, is some beef enchiladas. And again, what I am doing here is just doubling the recipe. So we're going to eat one tray of enchiladas tonight for dinner, and then put the other tray into the freezer for when baby comes. So pretty simple. All I'm doing here is making a quick enchilada sauce, which is a recipe that I found on Pinterest, believe it or not. And again, super simple. I think it was butter, flour, the spices that I wanted, some tomato paste, and then some beef broth on top, and that made this delicious enchilada sauce, which I don't think I've ever actually made previously. So it was a very simple recipe to follow, and again, definitely better quality than a jarred enchilada sauce that you might grab from the supermarket. And again, you know exactly what's in it. It doesn't have all the thickeners and whatever else. So I was pretty impressed with this little Pinterest recipe. So again, I'm really not following a recipe for these enchiladas. I kind of know what all the components are, and it's easy enough to just whip them together. My main goal, really, whenever I'm cooking anything, be it freezer meals or any meal for my family, my main goal is to incorporate as many veggies as I possibly can. This is something I started doing when my oldest was a toddler, I would say, and it really kind of came about from trying to hide vegetables in things so that, I was getting all those veggies into her, and, it was unbeknownst to her. And that's really easy to do with something like a spaghetti sauce, for example. You can grate up carrot and sweet potato, and the sky's the limit with something like pasta sauce. But I really do kind of take the opportunity whenever I'm making anything to just throw in as many vegetables as I can. Really, whatever I have on hand that won't be too strange in the meal, then I'll put that vegetable in there. So you can always rest assured that there's at least like 5 or 6 veggies in any given meal at our house, generally getting that 5 a day. In these enchiladas, I had onion, garlic, some sweet potato. We call sweet potato kumara here. I had a little bit of red onion randomly left over in a bag, as well as the capsicums there. And I think that may have been it. I may have thrown in a carrot. I'm not sure. But yeah, and all I do for that is saute all the veggies together, just like you do when you saute your onion and garlic. I just saute it all together and then start adding my meat and my spices and, whatever else I want to throw in. And then I also had sitting in my fridge for over a week and a half now, these corn on the cobs. And so I thought, we're probably not going to eat them otherwise, so I'll grill them up and throw them in these enchiladas as well. And then, of course, as you do, once all of your components are ready for your enchiladas, I've got my sourdough tortillas here, I've got my meat filling and my enchilada sauce, as well as some grated cheese for the top. Once it's all ready to go, straightforward, you make your little enchiladas. I will say my sourdough tortillas are not as flexible as I would have liked them to be, so they were, kind of difficult to not roll together, but they didn't really want to stay in this rolly shape. But they still ended up tasting absolutely delicious. And of course, with sourdough, they are gut healthy, so you're getting all of those benefits. I'm pretty sure in total here I ended up with about 25 enchiladas. So 1 tray for tonight and 1 tray for the freezer. And there is another beautiful, healthy, from scratch freezer meal for when this baby comes. Alright, these next 2 meals here are going to be slow cooker meals, so I'm not actually going to cook anything for this. I'm just going to cut everything up and add it to a freezer bag, label it, and then, give instructions for what to do with it. So the first thing I have here are beef fajitas, and literally all I'm doing for this is cutting up a big, beautiful piece of rump roast and a whole lot of capsicums, which you may call bell peppers where you're from. We call them capsicums here in New Zealand, onion, and then all my spices for beef fajitas, and then also a bag of beef stew, which, pretty similar, cutting up that meat, but different vegetables and different seasonings for that. These were not meals that I was intending on making. I think I had bought that rump roast for something else, and then I didn't end up needing it or using it or something, and it was sitting in my fridge for quite a few days, and I was like, okay, I really need to do something with this before it goes to waste, and so that is where these 2 meal ideas came about. Now, you may be noticing a lot of beef so far in this little freezer meal prep video, and actually, spoiler alert, I'm pretty sure every single meal that I filmed was beef. And I don't know how that happened. I don't know. It wasn't in my plan. Like I said, I just kind of filmed myself making these meals this past month, and this is what I've ended up with. So yeah, a lot of beef in this freezer meal prep video. However, of course, any of these you could very easily swap out for chicken instead. Chicken breast is actually quite expensive where we live. Chicken breast in particular is not something that I normally buy. Usually I would go for a whole chicken instead, and then, just break up the whole chicken and use the meat from that. But for some reason that just was not on my radar for my freezer meals. So we've got a lot of beef, but that is not a bad thing, especially postpartum. If you are dealing with a lot of bleeding and all of that, you definitely want to make sure, if you are someone who eats red meat, you want to make sure that you're incorporating a lot of red meat into your diet postpartum anyways, so I'm not mad at it. I just said before that you could swap out the beef for chicken, but looking at this beef stew that I'm putting together, you probably don't want a chicken stew. That doesn't sound very good. But you do you. If your family enjoys a good chicken stew, I would actually be interested to see a chicken stew recipe, if that's a thing. That, yeah, it might not be the worst thing. Anyways, all I did here was flavor up the beef in each of their individual bags, and then cut up all the veggies that I felt would go well with that meal. So for the beef fajitas here, I just did some garlic, onion, and pretty much an entire bag of capsicums. So that was good that I had those just sitting around. And then for the flavors there, I mean, the spices I put in for my Mexican food are all pretty much exactly the same, regardless of what type of Mexican food I'm making. It's like cumin, maybe a little bit of cinnamon, oregano, which we call oregano here, salt, pepper, garlic, onion powder, all of that good stuff. And then for my beef stew meat, I just kind of went with more homely, with sort of wintry herbs. So I think I had sage, thyme, parsley, I can't even remember, a whole bunch of mixed herbs, basically, you know, pretty straightforward. And then a whole lot of different veggies here: carrot, onion, garlic, leeks. I think I also threw a sweet potato in there, as well as some normal potatoes, and yeah, threw it all in the freezer and called it a day, and I'm looking forward to tasting those when they come out of the freezer. The next meal that I am moving on to preparing here is a good old-fashioned cottage pie. Here in New Zealand, cottage pie is a pretty common thing. I didn't grow up eating this growing up in the States, but cottage pie here is, you know, a pretty standard Kiwi dish to eat, and like, who doesn't love just getting a good old cottage pie out of the freezer? So for this, again, starting off with sauteing some veggies, I had leeks, onion, garlic, and then I threw in my meat. Obviously I have some potatoes on the boil. Once I flavored all my meat with all the flavorings I wanted, I added in some more some frozen mixed veggies on top there, and then went on to flavoring my mashed potato to top this cottage pie with. I love a good cottage pie. This is so easy to make, and I love that it's an all-in-one dish. You've got your carbohydrates, you've got your fat, you've got your protein, you've got all your veggies. Like, it's an all-inclusive type of meal, and it's very, very simple to make, which I really enjoy. So again, this was a recipe that I am making us one for tonight and one for the freezer, hence why there was so much of this. So again, another beautiful, healthy, from scratch freezer meal to get out when this baby arrives. On now to the last meal of this freezer meal prep video, and that is a good old beef lasagna. I had really been putting off making this meal for the simple reason that I didn't feel like making the pasta. I had planned to make this meal much earlier in the month, and then I just kept putting it off because I didn't feel like making the pasta, and I didn't want to buy pasta because I can make it myself, and I was kind of in a limbo. And I explained that to my husband, and he was like, oh, well, I'll make the pasta. So this lasagna here was very much a family affair. In fact, I think everyone at some point got involved in making the lasagna here. So while my husband worked at the dining table making the pasta sheets, I got busy obviously cutting up all my veggies. I don't even remember what was just in there: leeks, onion, garlic, carrot, and, you know, surprise, who knows what else was in there. Any veggie that I had that wouldn't be too strange. And then, of course, my meat and all the flavoring that I wanted to add in. And then I got started on my bechamel sauce. Very straightforward. You make your roux with butter and flour, and then slowly incorporate your milk, add your cheese, and voila, your cheese sauce, your bechamel sauce is ready. Once all my meat and veggies were all cooked through and I had added all my flavoring in, I added my cans of tomato. Why am I struggling to think of this? Canned tomato. Yeah. Yes, I added in my cans of tomato, and that was my meat sauce done. I left that now to simmer while I finished up my cheese sauce, and all the while my husband was very diligently rolling out the beautiful pasta that he had made. Pasta making was something that he'd never done before, but he actually really enjoyed it, and he's very much someone who, once he has started a task, he just gets so involved and loves it until it's finished. So he did a really, really good job with these pasta sheets here, and I thoroughly appreciated the fact that I didn't have to make the pasta sheets myself. So that was a big bonus. And then obviously, as you do with lasagna, I then started to put all of my components together, starting off with I think I put some pasta down on the bottom first, then my meat sauce, then my bechamel, then some more pasta sheets, then some more meat sauce, then some bechamel, and you know how lasagna goes. The day we put this together was quite a funny day. We were going out mid-afternoon to see a family movie together. We actually went, this was around Easter time when I filmed this, and we were actually going out to see the King of Kings movie that had come out. So I made this first lasagna prior to us going to see that movie, and then when we got home, baked it, and then later on that night, here is my husband putting together the lasagna for the freezer. So like I said, this lasagna was very much a team effort, which is pretty cool, and it's funny. Yeah, we're all looking forward to getting this lasagna out of the freezer when the baby comes. And then finally, all I'm putting together now is some sourdough bread. Sourdough bread is something that I have really been trying to fill the freezer with this past month, simply because I don't know what it's going to be like trying to stick to a sourdough routine with a newborn baby. I have never made bread whilst having a newborn baby. I'm sure it's very possible, and I'm sure that many of you mamas have done it. But yeah, obviously going into this, I don't know if I'm going to be able to bake bread. So I really wanted to have at least, 4 or 5 loaves that I can just pull out of the freezer if and when we need them. I also did focus a lot on filling the freezer with some baking things as well, which I didn't end up filming, but the freezer now has a good stash of like sourdough banana bread, sourdough chocolate bread, muffins, cornbread muffins. Yeah, there's quite a lot of different baking options in there, which I'm really, really happy with myself that I put in the time and effort to make those ahead of time. So we won't have to stress about any of that later on down the road. I have been keeping a pretty precise list of everything that I have put in the freezer so far. So there won't be any surprises when I go to get something out of there. I really wanted to stay on top of knowing exactly what is in the freezer, because I'm sure you can understand if you're anything like me and you have a big deep freeze. The stuff that's at the bottom of that freezer is very easily neglected. So I now have a very comprehensive list of everything that's in the freezer, and so as we work our way through the meals and through the baking and through everything else that's in there, I can erase those from my list. So I definitely recommend doing that. All right, friends, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you've made it this far, if you've made it to the end of the video, I thoroughly appreciate you. Thank you for spending your very, very valuable time hanging out over here on my channel and seeing what I was making to fill our freezer with. Take care of yourself, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye!